Ever wondered what the real cost of convenience is in our digital world? Tim Jensen, host of Intentionally Inconvenient, dares to question if convenience is truly the enemy of privacy. You'll explore the essence of privacy, why it's worth pursuing, and debunk the myth that it's a lost cause. Together, you will challenge the notion of, I have nothing to hide, and reveal why every bit of your information matters. Remember, all hope is not lost. It's time to reclaim your privacy in this intentionally inconvenient reality.
Hello and welcome to Intentionally Inconvenient, where we talk about personal freedom through securing your privacy. My name is Tim Jensen. I'm the host of Intentionally Inconvenient. In our last episode, we talked about email aliasing and why that's a key component in protecting our email and thus our privacy, but it also protects our online accounts, because not only should we use a different password with every account that we have online, but we should also use a different email address. And email aliasing is a key component to that. If you haven't watched that episode, you really need to watch that episode and really take in what it is that we're talking about when it comes to email aliasing. It's one of the most important things that you can do to protect your privacy. It's that important. Go back and watch that if you haven't. Okay, that was episode 21 called Email Aliasing. So today we're going to be covering the next step in our personal privacy bootcamp. Level 1, two-factor authentication and multi-factor authentication using hardware keys like this. And this is going to look kind of weird, but it's really small, like this, a hardware key, and even like this. Okay, so what's a hardware key other than what I just showed you? What's two-factor authentication, or 2FA? What's multi-factor authentication, or MFA? And why do we need this information? Why do we need two-factor authentication? Why do we need 2FA? Why do we need MFA? I want to start with two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication, is essentially an additional way to identify yourself to someone else. 2FA establishes trust with another person who does not know who you are by using something from a trusted authority as proof of your identity. Let me say that again. Two-factor authentication, or even multi-factor authentication, establishes trust with someone else who does not know who you are. They're on the other end of the internet. They're using something, or you're using something from a trusted authority that proves your identity. So you've experienced this a lot during your adult life, and you might not even have known it. Back in the day, we would write checks. Remember writing checks? Do you know what a check is? Okay, that's not a bunny rabbit trail we're going to go down, but we would write checks to businesses. Those little paper things, we have to, we have to have a photo ID sometimes to identify that it's really us, because our name is printed on the check and it's printed on the photo ID. We might have to give a phone number in case there's a question. And all this is done to help prove our identity and give the merchant or the person receiving the check the confidence that you are who you say you are, and that you will back up the money on that check from that account. So maybe when we were a child, we were registering for something. Our parents had to show something that identified us, identified our age, like a birth certificate. And they would do this to someone in a position of authority, like a school official or a little league coach or a library, to get a library card maybe. I don't know if I'm not really sure if you necessarily would show a birth certificate, but something that identifies you or them or someone, so that they get back something that they loaned you, or they guarantee that you really are the age that you say you are to join the Little League. Or maybe you're joining scouting or dance classes or whatever. They want to verify your age. They want to verify that you are who you say you are, that you are as old as you say you are, etc. Historically, here's another example. When we use a credit card or a debit card, we can identify who you say you are by asking for your zip code, your phone number, that little 3-digit code on the back of the card, or your photo ID, to make sure that you really are who you say you are and the name on that account, on that card. The first identification factor would be the card number. The second factor would be one of these other identifiers that I just mentioned. It requires 2 or more distinct and different forms of identification just to gain access. When this is done in person, you might need 2 forms of identification, like a driver's license or a passport, maybe a utility bill that's printed with your name and your address on it. We've been using 2-factor authentication all of our lives on this earth. Now let's translate this 2-factor authentication method to the internet, to online access. So online, you still need to prove who you are before you're granted access to an account, to an online account. Without that in-person experience, you're going to need to demonstrate in tangible ways that you are indeed you. So when this is done online, typically this requires a username and a password. There's already 2 factors there, a username and a password. Remember, we just talked about that a second ago, about using email aliases so that each email address or each username is a different username at every website. And then you use a different password. But those are 2 factors that identify it's really you, because you create the account with that information. And then it's followed by a separate form of authentication. Now, these are going to be really generic terms. These types of authentication to authenticate your identity could be something that you have. It could be something that you are. It could be something that you know. Or it could be somewhere that you are. Now, that's the rarest one, and there's very specific use cases, but most of the time it's not done geographically. But let's look at these separately for a second. What is something that you have? Maybe it's a cell phone. Maybe it's another connected electronic device. It could be something that you could receive a code over the internet from, or via software application on that device. It could be a hardware key, like I showed you earlier, my little YubiKey here, or my other YubiKey here that I have. It could be something that you physically have to plug into a device, a USB drive or a USB-C drive or a lightning cable drive. The key has to be registered with the website prior to being used for authentication. Otherwise, how do they know? So when you create the account, or before you can use it, and let's say you've logged in, and now you want to register that key, you've got to register the key before you can use it. Let's talk about something that you are, maybe a fingerprint or a thumbprint or a facial scan or a retinal scan. Maybe it's something as simple as that. What about something that you know? Maybe it's a piece of information that is unique to you, like the name of a relative, an old phone number, an old address that you used to live at, or an old email address, or mother's maiden name. Does that sound familiar? That's a piece of information that is unique to you or that person. So that's something that you know. What about somewhere you are? Now, like I said, this is rarely used, and it's typically specific to your job or the role that you play in society. Maybe calling a landline. It rings at a specific location. You can't just move a landline. A landline is not a mobile device. It's stationary. And so by calling that landline, we know that at least it's you, or at least you're there at that spot, so we can identify you a little easier. Maybe log into a specific device that can only be used at a specific location. So for the rest of this episode and for the next one, we are going to focus on just the first point. Something you have. We're not going to discuss the other ones because those are a lot, those don't really focus well on online. The most secure something that you have is going to be that hardware key. That one, or this one, or even this one. It's going to be the most secure one that you have. Like a YubiKey are the first two. The blue one that I showed you is a YubiKey, and then this one here, this little teeny tiny one, is a YubiKey as well. This is actually the best one as far as I'm concerned, but that's just my opinion. Or an OnlyKey is also another way you can authenticate using two-factor authentication. Now, why are these the best ones to use? Better than authentication applications, better than sending a text, or sending an email or placing a phone call to give out a code. Why are these hardware keys better than all those other ones? It's very simple. You have to have the key physically with you to use it. If you don't have the key physically with you, you can't use it. And you cannot download a physical key. You cannot steal a physical key by hacking into a website. You cannot duplicate, at least the YubiKeys, you cannot duplicate. I've been told by someone, and I've never verified this, so I can't speak to this for sure, but I've been told that the OnlyKey is actually duplicatable. We'll hold off on judgment on that because I actually don't know. It's just something I heard, but I haven't verified it with any authority or anything like that. Hardware keys need to be physically with you, so that's the best kind because they have to have the key. Without the key, you can't get in. It's that simple. And like I said before, hardware keys have to be registered with that website prior to being used as an identifier. So the best time to do this registration with the website is when you initially set up your account. And you want to have everything ready. You want to have every key that you're going to register with the website, every authenticator that you have with the website, and any phone number or email address that you're going to register with the website. Have that all in the same spot right now when you initially set up that account. That's the best way to do it. The second best time to register those hardware keys is right now. Because you didn't do it earlier, don't wait. Do it now. Go ahead. We'll wait. You can push pause on this video and we'll wait. Okay, I'm done waiting. You can push pause and you can pause me forever if you want. But anyway, before I continue, let me ask you a quick question. Would you like to start your own podcast? I've been using a production team to produce the Intentionally Inconvenient podcast. So let's face it, if I had to do everything myself, it would never get done. If I had to do everything myself just to get this out to you so that you could hear the information, I just wouldn't do it. I've already proved this. If you look back at the dates of some of my episodes, some of them have like a 6-month gap between one episode and the next. I'm trying to remedy that, but at the same time, you're never going to get it done if you don't just have something motivating you to do it. So this is the process that I use to produce this podcast. Earlier today, I created the notes for this episode so that I can do a good job presenting the information in an organized, logical manner that makes it understandable to you, the listener. Secondly, I record the episode, which is what I'm doing now. Thirdly, I'll upload the episode immediately after I finish recording this. I will upload this to my cloud service. And then the fourth thing I do is notify the production team that the cloud has now, that the episode has been uploaded to the cloud. That's it. They handle the rest. So what do? They create the thumbnail graphic that you see on your screen when you go to the YouTube version of the podcast. If you're on the podcast app, they created that logo that you saw. They transcribe the podcast. So word for word, whether it's good or bad, it's transcribed. And it's on my website at intentionallyinconvenient.com. You can go there and take a look. They're all there. You can they'll create emails for me to send to my email list so that I can invite people to say something like, hey, I got another episode up and this is what it's talking about. Go here and listen. That kind of thing. Social media posts, they create those so that I can put those to my podcast. So I can advertise the podcast. I can go to LinkedIn. I can go to Facebook. I can go to x.com, and I can advertise this. They upload it to YouTube, and I also upload it to my podcast host, where I host the podcast episode, the audios. They create the show notes. They schedule the broadcast so that it's spread out. Frequently I'll do a couple episodes in one sitting. I'll record a couple at a time, and then I'll record them, I'll upload them, and tell them they're all set. But they'll schedule them so that there's some time in between each one. They add the introduction, both the announcer and the music, and they also the ending music, or what they call the outro, where it's the final few words from the announcer and the closing music. They submit it to all the popular podcast outlets like Spotify, Apple Podcasts. AntennaPod is the one I like. I think there's like 15 or 20 of them that they do that with. These days, people are turning to podcasting YouTube for their information. Everyone's got a podcast in them. If you're an entrepreneur, if you run a business, you owe it to yourself to get a podcast going, and you should definitely head over to goclick.me/podcast. See it on the screen down here? My production team did that. See that right there? It's right there. Yeah, my production team put that there. goclick.me/podcast. For those of you just listening to audio only, goclick.me/podcast. That's where you go and get started today with your podcast. Go get my production team. You can hire them. Really, I'll let you do it. It's okay. They have a lot of people working on these things. goclick.me/podcast. Okay, now back to hardware keys. I prefer the YubiKey for two-factor authentication, and specifically, this is the one I was showing you before, the YubiKey 5CA. So this has got a USB-C tip on it. It's got a lightning tip on it. Those are the two. There's these little tiny, I don't know if you can see this with the camera, but there's these little tiny metal pieces there. When you authenticate, it requires you to physically touch both sides on that metal, and that tells the YubiKey that there's a real person behind this, and that sends the information off. It won't send it without that. I can plug this into my Google Pixel. I can plug it into an iPhone because it's got both ends to it. Plus, I also have this. You can get these on Amazon. This is an adapter from USB-C to USB-A. And a USB-A is what normally you would plug in to a computer, a PC, or a laptop. So I can take this, I can put these two together, and now I can plug this YubiKey into a computer or a laptop, a PC or a laptop. So that is the best one. Why is that the best one? First of all, it also uses near-field communication, or NFC. You can tap it when it's plugged in, and it will send that code through the NFC. I don't have to type anything, and off it goes. It's the most flexible. I can also store authentication codes. On this one, I can store up to 32. On the newer ones, you can store up to 64 authentication codes, like those 6-digit codes that you would sometimes get texted to you, or dig them up on an authenticator app. Well, this plugs into your phone. You open up the authenticator app, and it shows you the codes. If you unplug this with the authenticator app still open, you can't see the codes because you have to have the key plugged into the phone. So the codes live on here, not on the phone. They have to work together. That's another very intentionally inconvenient process, which keeps your codes safe because the codes live on the key, not on the phone. Okay. The YubiKey CI is the most flexible of the YubiKeys on the market. It's also the most expensive. As of this day of recording, which is November 26th of 2024, they're $75 a piece plus tax and shipping and so forth. I've got mine. When I got mine, I bought them on Amazon. You can do the same thing, or you can go to YubiKo, YubiCo.com. That'll be in the show notes if you need that. I'm not going to repeat it 10 times like I do the other one. Here's how I have my hardware keys set up. I purchased 2 of these, and then I purchased a little baggie of these adapters. You can also buy adapters for the lightning tip, so that the adapter goes on the lightning tip side and into the USB-A on your computer. I also purchased a second set of YubiKeys, so I bought 2 of these, and you put your authenticator codes on both of them. One goes in your safe or your safe deposit box at your financial institution, preferably off-site, because if you have a burglar come into your house, it gets stolen. If you get your safe stolen, or if your house burns down, you don't want these things destroyed. But the other reason is very simple. You carry the other one with you and you use it. That's what it's there for, right? If you lose it, if it gets damaged, if it gets destroyed, whatever, you still got the other one in a separate location, in a separate facility, safe deposit box, like I say, or other facility of your choosing. So I purchased 2 of those YubiKeys. I also purchased 2 of these ones. These are the El Cheapo ones. I got these for like $25 a piece on Amazon. I call them the blue YubiKeys because, well, they're blue. And so I use these for a lot of everyday things that just involve plugging it into the computer. You'll notice this has got that USB-A tip on it. And the USB-A just goes into your computer. You can get a reducer adapter to go into a phone of USB-C or the micro USBs. Remember those back in the day? Or like I said, the lightning tips. There's a number of different ways you can get adapters to make these interchangeable on different pieces of equipment. But anyway, these blue ones are the least expensive ones. Got those about $25. Again, you want to buy 2. Never buy just one. Always buy 2. Always buy 2. Never buy just one. And the reason, like I said, you can lose it. It can get damaged. And then you have another one as a spare. Always buy 2. I don't use the blue keys in the mobile device because I have the adapter, but I've got the adapter for the other one too. I registered all 4 keys with every account that's online. All 4 of them. So they're interchangeable. I can use any one of them. When available, it requires that physical touch. This one you can see is on the front there, that little gold thing, and I push that while it's plugged in. This one, it's the 2 little thingies on the side. And I require that because that way you can't just have it plugged in and sit there and be away from your computer. You have to physically be present at the computer in order to use the YubiKey. That's another safeguard to prevent a hacker, because there are people that leave their YubiKeys plugged into their computer all the time. That's your choice, but at least you've got to physically touch it in order for it to work, or it does not send the codes. That's very important. Okay, so I also use an OnlyKey as you can. I don't do this myself, but I use. You can use the OnlyKey for 2-factor authentication. I only use this as a password manager. The OnlyKey will store up to 24 passwords. I like to keep the passwords and the 2-factor authentication on separate devices. Let me give you a visual here for that. Separate devices, so that the passwords and the 2-factor codes and the usernames don't all live on the same device. Convenience is the enemy of privacy. You've heard me say that a million times. If it may be convenient for you, but it's also convenient for someone else too. So I keep my passwords here. I keep my 2-factor here. Never the two shall meet. They are always separate. You might be wondering what these chains are. These are little magnets that I have on there. These little magnets attach to the other end of the magnet, which goes onto a lanyard that I use to keep the keys so that I can find them easily, because I have a bad habit of losing things. Ask my wife. She'll tell you all about it. Okay, so you can store up to 24 passwords on the OnlyKey. But think about this. I've mentioned this in the password episode as well. I'm getting ahead of myself here. The OnlyKey has 6 little keys on the front, numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Those keys are used to unlock and decrypt all the passwords that are on this key. You can't just plug this in there and it'll just spit out the passwords. You have to put in it's a 7 to 10 digit code. Actually, I think you can go up to 12, where you punch in the code in order, and that unlocks it and decrypts all the stuff that's on there. And now you can send those codes out. Now you can send those passwords out. Now you can send those usernames out. This also does stuff with cryptocurrency. I have never researched that. I know it does something. You can go to onlykey.io and read all about it on their website. I'm not going to talk about it here because I'm not going to talk about something I don't know about. You can store up to 24 passwords on here. And it's important that you can only have so many accounts on here, so you only want to put the most important accounts, passwords, and usernames on here. Not every willy-nilly, every different website. Entire logins can be stored in a password slot. So you can put the username, you can put the password in. Like I say, you can put the 2-factor in. I don't recommend that, but you can do that. There's also 3 passcodes that you put on here. 12 of the 24 passwords are using one passcode. The other 12 are using a second passcode. And the third passcode is what I call the self-destruct. If you put in that third passcode while it's plugged into a device, it will erase all data on the OnlyKey. It will erase the entire thing. Wipe it out. It's gone. Self-destruct. If you think that there's a purpose for that, then make sure you keep that handy, that code. It's going to wipe it out, completely erase the OnlyKey. Okay, if you, let's see here. I've been told that the contents of the OnlyKey can be copied when the passcode is entered in and decrypted, and the data is decrypted. So because of that, it's another reason not to do two-factor codes. I don't know how to do this. Don't know how to copy the contents of the OnlyKey to a different device. I would imagine that the information can be found somewhere on the internet. Knock yourself out and go look it up. I don't want to know. I purchased two OnlyKeys, and they have the same stuff on it. So I have a backup. One goes in the safe. One stays with me to use. Same thing. Okay, so that's the main information. Let's review the main points that I covered in the episode. Two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication has been around a long time. It's been around as long as human beings have had the need to identify themselves to another person. Two-factor authentication establishes trust with another person who does not know who you are by using something from a trusted authority as proof of identity. I prefer hardware keys like a YubiKey or an OnlyKey for two-factor authentication because they have to be physically in my possession in order to be used. It satisfies the something you have category for two-factor authentication identification. Hardware keys have to be registered prior to being used to be an identifier. The best time to do it is right when you initially set up that account. You want to have all your keys with you, all your authenticators apps with you, your phone number, all that stuff, your email, so you can set it all up at one sitting. The best time to do that is right when you set up the account. The second best time is right now. Just do it. If you forgot to do it earlier, do it. Just get it done. Excuse me. I use YubiKeys for two-factor authentication. I use OnlyKeys for password management. But my most important passwords are what is stored on here. That's it. You can also use the OnlyKey as a password extender. We talked about this in the password, in a couple of different password episodes, where you would put a 7, 8, 9, 10-digit, 12-digit code that's on top of the password that you have in the password manager so that the full password is not living in the password manager, the software one. Part of it's there, your Proton password manager. That's what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. And the rest of it is on here so that they're separate. So you need both the key, the physical key, and the software password manager. That gives you peace of mind knowing that nobody knows your password, including you, because you have it on here. So I purchased two of each type, using one for a backup and one for using. So that's what I have for you regarding two-factor authentication and multi-factor authentication using hardware keys. Level 1 of the privacy backup, of the privacy bootcamp. Boy, I sure can't speak today. Be sure that you get set up with between 2 and 4 YubiKeys and at least 2 of the 5 CI. I know it's a lot of money, $75 a piece. I realize that. You just have to buy it once and it's yours and you use it all the time. But it's the most secure way to keep your two-factor authentication codes. And then get a couple of OnlyKeys to store for physical password. This is for the most important passwords you're going to use. And there's a lot of other things that this thing does that I haven't touched. You have an excellent way of securing your online accounts that way. You can purchase all these on Amazon.com, or you can go to onlykey.io, and this will be in the show notes, or yubico.com and purchase them separately. I just did them all on Amazon and had them shipped. Don't forget, if you're looking to get starting on your own podcast, go to goclick.me/podcast to get started. You'll really be glad you did. It will help your business. You can build your business. I keep talking to my chiropractor, and if you're listening, Chad, get going. But you can enhance your business and you can grow your business using a podcast. So goclick.me/podcast. Tell you what I'm going to do. If you sign up using that link, and that's an affiliate link, I get a commission, a small commission, if you sign up, if you do a paid account with the podcast company. I get a commission. I'm not afraid to tell you that. It's how we pay the bills. It's how I can pay to get this produced. I will give you your own goclick.me account. You can use that to redirect for your website. You can track all of your links. You can track where your clicks are coming from. You can track which ads are working, which ads are not working. I will give you a goclick.me account for as long as you have your podcast account. goclick.me/podcast. Do it now. In our next episode, I'll discuss another essential tool for staying private. Two-factor authentication, multi-factorication, but this time using the authenticator apps on your phone, as well as text, email, and phone call codes. Until next time, this is Tim Jensen reminding you to stay safe and stay private. Thanks for listening.
That's all for now from Intentionally Inconvenient, leaving you with a challenge to question the cost of online convenience. If you want to keep learning, subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Your reviews and 5-star ratings help reach more listeners. Until next time, remember, your privacy is never a lost cause. Stay safe, stay private.